Annual event for 2021, aka the pandemic modified version. This event is different, but the idea is the same. It's to celebrate Engineering Week and recognize some outstanding local engineers. My name is Roger Babcock. I'm the new director for Department of Facility Maintenance for the city, and I'll be your MC for today. So anyway, HCES is very happy that you're all joining us here today, and to celebrate National Engineers Week and to recognize 4 outstanding local engineers, a student engineer of the year, a young engineer of the year, an engineer of the year, and an achievement award. So these folks represent the best of our profession. There is a program that you'll be receiving, I guess, later, or it's on our website that has more information and photos and stuff like that. So I'm going to have a short introduction, some words from our governor and mayor, followed by some introductions and the awardees giving their acceptance speeches. We'll have a keynote speaker, and after that, and then we hope to finish everything by 1 o'clock. So I first want to acknowledge some distinguished guests that are here today. We have with us Senator Ron Kochi. He's Senate President. We've got Representative Scott Psyche. He's Speaker of the House. We've got Representative Ty Cullen. He's Vice Chair of the House Committee on Finance. We've got Dr. Brennan Morioka, Dean of the UH College of Engineering. We've got Jade Boutte, Director of the State Department of Transportation. Carter Luke, Director, Department of, he's Engineering Program Manager, for Department of Transportation, Harbors Division. We've got Dean Uchida, he's Director of DPP for the city. Alexander Kozlov, he's Director of TDC for the city. We've got Haku Mills, who is our Deputy Director for DDC at the city. And also Lori Kahitina is here. She's our Interim Executive Director and CEO for HART. So we also have we always normally acknowledge our past recipients. So if you're a past recipient, please wave at your camera. We also have some past presidents of HCES, so you can wave at their camera too. I also want to we'd all like to thank our sponsors, Kaufman Engineers, WSP, AECOM, HDR, Belt Collins, RM Towel, and GPRM Prestress. So National Engineers Week was begun in 1951 by the National Society of Professional Engineers. So that's 70 years now. The theme for 2021 is Imagining Tomorrow. And it's about how engineers will be at the heart of solutions to combat climate change, secure cyberspace, develop vaccines, and make the world a better place for all of us. So that's the theme for this year. Here in Hawaii on Tuesday, we did have our kickoff virtual luncheon run by Society of American Military Engineers. I had 2 speakers, Captain Gordy Meyer of NAVFAC and Dean Brennan Morioka from UH College of Engineering. And at that time, there was a HCES Board of Directors transition. The new officers are myself as chair, vice chair is Jay Stone, the treasurer is Kristen Yoshida, they're both Mel Collins. The immediate past chair is Donna Kishi. HCES, the Hawaii version, was started in 1965, and there are 17 member organizations right now, and with a combined membership of over 2,000 engineers. The Wee-Leaky, our newsletter, which most of you have seen, is now in edition or volume 56 under the care of Warren Yamamoto, our editor. So now what we're going to do is we'll move right into our 2 recorded messages from the Governor Ige, and from Mayor Blangiardi. Their proclamations that they wrote are in the actual program.
Aloha. Thank you to the Hawaii Council of Engineering Societies for inviting me to celebrate the 2021 Engineering Week Awards with you. I'm proud to be part of this event, which emphasizes the value of engineering professions and culminates a week of activities promoting and educating the public on this important vocation. Congratulations to the 2021 honorees on your outstanding accomplishments and achievements in the different fields of engineering. On behalf of the state of Hawaii, I want to thank you for the important role you play in our community and for your contributions to society. Mahalo.
Aloha and happy Engineers Week. You know, this week is truly a celebration of each and every one of you. I'd like to take this opportunity to personally thank you. You know, we owe so much to the engineering industry and to each of you at the Hawaii Council of Engineering Society. You are a critical part of our city's ohana. It's members like you that we turn to in formulating many of our program and policy decisions at the City Council. So we're counting on you when it comes to ensuring clean drinking water in our homes, relocating utilities along the Dillingham Corridor, the many technological advancements we will need for our future, innovative solutions on climate change, and the integrity of our roadways. You know, I am most sincere when I say it's your skills that will help improve the quality of life for everyone in our community. And I'm so excited to watch how all of you will make an impact during my time as mayor and beyond. So thank you for your hard work, and thank you in advance for your many, many future contributions. Aloha.
Okay, well, thank you, Mr. Governor and Mr. Mayor. Now it's time to bring up our winners. So first will be the Student Engineer of the Year. That's Willie Chang. And Willie, let me get your bowl and your lei. So, okay, so now you have to imagine me passing it across, and then it magically appears on the other side. But we didn't work that all out too well. So just imagine, pretend. Willie is a computer engineering major at UH he's a very good student. He has a 4.0 GPA. He's graduating with his bachelor's in May and also has a minor in business administration. He's going to be continuing on for his master's degree in electrical engineering. He's an officer in the student club, IEEE. He's also a member of the Hawaii Kai JCs. Willie is on a 4-year Regents Scholarship. He's a computer engineer who's also interested in medicine, and he's involved with the Pre-Medical Association and the Pre-Health Career Corps. And he volunteered at the med school, Chapman, bioinformatics team. He also interned at the UH Cancer Center and published a research paper. Willie participated in the Hawaii Annual Coding Challenge a couple of times, and the second time their team won second place. Willie has also volunteered at the Hawaii Space Flight Laboratory. In the area of giving back, Willie has been a math and science tutor at the Online Learning Academy his whole time at UH. So congratulations, Willie, and go
ahead. Thank you, Dr. Babcock, for that warm introduction. While it's unfortunate that I'm unable to accept this award in person due to extenuating circumstances, it is an incredible honor that I would never imagine to achieve. I would like to keep things short, so I'll make this relatively quick. Throughout my entire academic career, there are 3 words that have resonated with me and encouraged me to keep going. Do your best. When I was younger, I was scrambling to put the finishing touches on an assignment one night and was on the verge of tears due to the amount of work that still needed to be done. We've all been there. It was then that my mother came in and said, as long as you do your best, it will be fine. Since then, I have done exactly that. While that led to projects and internships, it brought me something greater, the interactions that I get to have with astounding individuals. Every day, I meet people who know different technologies, software, theories that I've never even heard of. People with passions, dreams, and livelihoods, and desires to improve the livelihoods of others. These connections have brought out the best in me, letting me become who I have today and what I have accomplished. It is important to me then to honor these individuals and groups today that have enabled me to receive the Student Engineer of the Year award. To the Hawaii Council of Engineering Societies, thank you for recognizing the amazing achievements of engineers in Hawaii. To my professors and mentors, thank you for your guidance and instruction, giving me the knowledge and advice I need to pursue my projects. To my best friends, thank you for the nightly cram sessions, the random conversations, and the endless laughs. And to my family, thank you for your unconditional love and support in all of my endeavors. To engineers, both aspiring and current, do your best. Thank you.
Thank you, Willie. Good job. Congratulations to you, the 2021 Student Engineer of the Year. So now it's time to introduce our 2021 Young Engineer of the Year. So I'm happy to introduce Kapiolani Street. So give her a bowl. Okay, so pass the bowl. There you are. Okay, so let me say a few words about Kapi. Kapiolani Street was born and raised in the island of Maui, and she's a proud alumna of Kamehameha School's Kapalama campus. In 2013, she earned her bachelor's in civil engineering and a dual degree, a Bachelor of Arts in Anthropology from UH Manoa. In 2020, she obtained her MBA from the Scheidler College of Business at Manoa. She now has 7 years of experience in civil and sanitary engineering projects. She currently is a project engineer with Lim Tiako Consulting Group. Her projects include stormwater erosion control, design, wastewater system design, site development, and utility design. Copies became a licensed professional engineer in Hawaii in 2017. She currently serves as past president and website co-chair for American Society of Civil Engineers, HCES Younger Member Forum. She's also active in American Waterworks Association and the annual Pacific Water Conference. She previously served as AWWA Hawaii Section Secretary and the 2019 ASE Western Regional Younger Member Council Conference Committee and the Chi Epsilon Alumni Association Secretary and ASCE YMF Wiliki Chair. So it's my pleasure to introduce Kapiolani Street, our young engineer.
Thank you very much, Dr. Babcock. First, I want to acknowledge my fellow award recipients, the Student Engineer of the Year, Willie Chang, the Engineer of the Year, Steve Baldridge, and the family of the Lifetime Achievement Award winner, the late David Waller. Congratulations to all of you on all of your many accomplishments. I am honored to be mentioned in your company. Next, I would like to thank the American Society of Civil Engineers Hawaii section for nominating me for this award, and to the Hawaii Council of Engineering Societies for selecting me as this year's award recipient. I am truly humbled and honored to receive this award and to join the list of past award recipients, all of whom I have long admired and respected. This accomplishment is not something I did alone, and there are many others who deserve to share in this award with me, some of whom I would like to acknowledge today. I'd like to thank my family and friends, especially my mom and my stepdad, for their unwavering support and belief in me. Thank you for nurturing and encouraging me. You allowed me to make mistakes and find my own path, and I will forever be grateful for all of your love and support. I have also been extremely blessed to have been surrounded by great mentors, managers, and colleagues within the civil engineering field, and without their support and guidance, I would not be standing here today. Thank you very much to Kat Sawai and Lorna Heller. You are both my first examples of strong and successful women in this industry, and seeing you thrive in your roles at the Honolulu Board of Water Supply and in various service organizations made me believe that could be me one day too. Thank you very much to Michael Street, known to me affectionately as Uncle Mike. I have appreciated all of your career advice throughout the years. You always emphasize the importance of relationships and giving back. But most of all, thank you for gently nudging me in the direction of Limtiaco when I was trying to figure out what my next step would be after graduation.
No, can't.
Which leads me to my next acknowledgement. Thank you very much to the principals and to all of my coworkers, past and present, at the Limtiaco Consulting Group for your support throughout the years. I have been at Limtiaco for 7 years now, and it is the place and the people that have shaped me into the engineer I am today. I'd like to give a special shout out to my boss, Kyle Kaneshiro. Thank you very much for believing in me and pushing me to reach new heights and embrace new challenges. Thank you for always encouraging questions and being open to new ideas. You have taught me so much, but among other things, to slow down, to be patient with myself, and to find fun and laughter in things always. And last but not least, I would like to thank my fellow young engineers. There are too many to list individually here. Working with all of you has inspired me to strive to be better and to do better in everything I do. Your energy and enthusiasm for this industry are infectious and motivates me to remain active and involved in the organizations that I serve in. I look forward to continuing to work with you to make a lasting impact on this industry in the years to come. Thank you again to the Hawaii Council of Engineering Societies for this honor and for transitioning this year's award ceremony to a virtual platform so that we are still able to celebrate one another in light of the times we are living in. I appreciate the opportunity I had today to thank so many of the people who have been part of my journey thus far. My success in the future can only be measured by the good that I do for others, and I aspire to continue to give back to the engineering community, a community that continues to give so much to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Copy. That was great. That's our 2021 Young Engineer of the Year. So next up, we're going to hear from our 2021 Engineer of the Year, Mr. Steve Baldrige. So I'll do the little introduction. Steve Baldrige is the founder and president of BASE, which I believe stands for Baldrige and Associates Structural Engineering. Steve received his Bachelor of Science in Civil Engineering from the University of Wisconsin-Madison, and his master's in Civil Engineering from UT Austin. In 1990, he came to Honolulu to work with JAI and later Martin and Bravo. In 1995, he started his own structural engineering firm, BASE. Under his leadership, BASE has expanded to Guam, Chicago, Florida, and India with signature projects across all offices. In the late 90s, Steve began providing anti-terrorism design service, which is a relatively new specialty. Since then, his firm has emerged as a leading structural engineering consulting firm addressing protective design. In 2006, Steve co-authored a publication entitled Prevention of Progressive Collapse in Multi-Story Concrete Buildings. And he served as the director of the Applied Technology Council, ATC, a national technical nonprofit professional organization dedicated to advancement of engineering technology to mitigate natural hazards. During his tenure on the board, Steve helped steer the ATC to expand its focus to include the mitigation of man-made terrorist disasters. In addition to providing protective design, Steve and his firm are one of the nation's foremost experts in engineering for high-risk environments with special expertise in designing structures that are resilient against high seismic activities, hurricane and tornado winds, and tsunamis. So he served as ATC's project technical director for ATC 64, Development of Design and Construction Guide, special facilities for vertical evacuation from tsunamis, the seminal document that led to the ASE Tsunami Design Chapter. This work has a direct impact on reducing the risks associated with tsunamis in Hawaii. So for nearly 3 decades, Steve has shared his expertise on natural disaster mitigation through volunteering in areas hit by earthquakes and tsunamis. Steve also volunteers to work with Honolulu's youth with an emphasis on encouraging STEM. In 2001, he formed the Hawaii chapter of the ACE Mentor Program, providing opportunities for high school students to learn about architecture, construction, and engineering. In 2007, he traveled with the team from Honolulu High School to Washington, D.C., where they won the inaugural CIRT-ACE National Design Competition. And I'd also mention that way back in the early 2000s, Steve helped me with my senior design class when we first started it at Manoa in 2002. So it's my pleasure to introduce Steve. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Wow, there's a great bunch of engineers here. I'm honored and humbled to win this award, and thinking back of other engineers who have won it before me, like Alfred Yee and Dr. Chu, people that I really looked up for. I probably wouldn't be an engineer if it wasn't for my parents. At home growing up, I remember them having subscriptions to Popular Mechanics or Popular Science Magazine and National Geographic, and whether it was looking at the pictures of really cool stuff or actually reading the articles, piqued my interest in both engineering and the world. My dad was a tool and die maker. It's a technical trade that requires engineering skills, and he could essentially build an engine from scratch, all the parts and pieces, whether it was for an airplane, a locomotive, a truck, or farm equipment, and I thought that was pretty cool. While he never made it to college and didn't become an engineer, he encouraged me to follow my dreams, and I became the first one in my family to graduate from college. High school was interesting. I went to public high school in Chicago, which was at the time considered one of the worst public schools systems in the country. But if you apply yourself, you can always make it. And the AP teachers that were around me encouraged me. It was really nice to have that. One teacher in particular gave me a little bit of advice. She says, if you don't get out of the neighborhood by the time you're 21, you never will. And that got me thinking about studying in other states and traveling the world. Same thing I try to tell kids from Hawaii, get your undergraduate here, go to grad school somewhere else, see what else there is for you. I finished up at Wisconsin my last 2 years in engineering, where I met Professor Chuck Salmon. He told us to call him Chuck. Great engineer. He wrote a lot of books on structural engineering, was very practical, and just a great all-around person. It was during that time I also first met Dr. Arthur Chu. They were both heavily involved in the ASCE and a national enclave that was held in Madison, attended by UH students. So that got me thinking about Hawaii. Arthur Chu became a very good friend of mine over the years, working in one of the technical nonprofits. My engineering career got off to a real bumpy start. My first job, I got a call on Friday afternoon. Hey, have you moved yet? And I said, no. And they said, well, we got to let you go. The economy's kind of gone bad. What are you going to do? So I spent the mornings, hit the streets, going to engineering firms, trying to find a job. And the afternoons, I did construction work where I actually busted concrete with a sledgehammer to replace sidewalks and steps. Eventually finding my first job. You have mentors throughout the years in your career. Chris Stefanos in Chicago, my first job, he threw me out of the frying pan and into the fire, gave me a lot of responsibility, which was great. And then later, a gentleman named Big Al Basic, who taught me how to design, thinking about how things are constructed, how to make the process a lot more efficient, even internally as a company. And you use all those lessons as you go on with your life. When I started out my own firm, the biggest lesson I learned from both of them was try to hire people smarter than you. Surround yourself with really good people. It's great to bounce ideas off of them, get different opinions, listen to them. So here in Hawaii, base wouldn't be anywhere close to where it is without Frank Humay and Fernando Frontera, and in Chicago, our Chicago office, and now at the Chitter, and Mark Hershey, who worked with us in Hawaii, where he started his career as well. We also, and as an engineer, wouldn't be here without great clients. The first 5 years was very rough. We didn't have much work. I did some work for Alfred Yee, which was great to get to know him a bit. And it was a chance meeting, and you got to take chances, where I met Dan Arana and Denny Watts, who were at Fletcher Pacific at the time, and we started talking about design build. That led to our first win in the design build engineering project at Kaneohe Marine Base, and eventually led to a whole slew of great Department of Defense projects, one in a competitive design build environment. Working with contractors, you're part of the process. It's just not engineering. You got to think about how things are built. That would eventually lead to commercial clients and clients that have stuck with us from the very, very beginning, like Steve Metter with the MW Group and Stanford Carr, who's always optimistic guy to work with. A great bunch of projects over the years, many national award-winning projects, but even beyond that, projects like senior housing that we do with Steve Metter, or affordable housing that we've done with Marshall Hung and Stanford Carr, very important to our community. Take a lot of pride in those, as well as all the Department of Defense work that we do. But it's not all about just engineering and the business and working. Volunteering is both important, but it also helps to grow you as a person. I've been so honored to be a member of the Applied Technology Council, a nonprofit technical group, and also spent some time on the Pankow Foundation. That has led me to meet a really great group of engineers over the years. Many of them have become lifetime friends and work on some very interesting projects, technical standpoint, code standpoint, etc. Working with Hawaii's youth, Adult Friends for Youth, which is at-risk kids. We were taking them around at construction sites, showing them what they might be able to do. And then also the ACE Mentor program, as was mentioned earlier. And then disaster response. I mean, I've spent time traveling earthquakes, tsunamis. I walked the rubble pile of the World Trade Center. I met with village elders in Samoa after the tsunami, and spent a lot of time at Haiti and after the earthquake. And those are both very uplifting and great ways to give back to the community. So I want to just say in closing, mahalo nui loa. I look forward to contributing and making a positive impact here in the islands and the world through engineering is what all of us do here. Thank you again.
Thanks and congratulations, Steve. It's now time to introduce our Lifetime Achievement Award winner, Mr. David Waller, and Sam Gilly is going to tell us all about him. Sam.
Okay, let me share my screen here. The Hawaii Council of Engineering Society's Lifetime Achievement Award provides annual recognition to the achievements of a retired professional engineer who has contributed significantly to the development of engineering and the betterment of the state of Hawaii. Dave G. Waller, PE, is posthumously the 2021 HCES Lifetime Achievement Awardee. Dave was selected for this honor for an engineering career of 46 years that was always directed to developing a resource essential for our modern society, energy. Living in Hawaii with our annual hurricane threat, and after watching the events in Texas last week, we all appreciate and know the critical importance of energy in our daily lives. Dave first worked in the petroleum industry as a chemical engineer, testing oil wells in Canada, and then as a refinery engineer at the PRI refinery in Hawaii. He moved on to work as an engineer, director, manager, and vice president at Hawaiian Electric. After retirement, he worked as a research geothermal energy at the University of Hawaii. Dave earned his chemical engineering degree from Rose Holman Institute of Technology at Terre Haute, Indiana in 1970. To fulfill his required military service during the Vietnam era, he enlisted in the Air Force, where he learned Russia and used it during reconnaissance flights. After working over a decade as a chemical engineer, he returned to college and earned his MBA at Manoa. Dave was the director of the team that led the program promoting installation of hot water heat pumps at hotels and condominiums in Hawaii, which provides significant energy savings. For his work, Hawaiian Electric was awarded the utility's top honor, the Edison Award. The award reads, presented in 1995 in recognition of Hawaiian Electric's distinguished leadership, innovation, and contribution to the advancement of the electric industry for the benefit of all. Dave was also central to the basic ordering agreement, which led to dozens of energy conservation projects with all branches of the US government. Dave helped develop and manage the demand side management and demand response programs in the 90s when utilities began to start paying customers to not use electricity. After his retirement from Hawaiian Electric as a vice president, he returned to Manoa and earned a master's in geoscience degree. As a researcher, he co-authored 7 papers on geothermal resources covering all the major islands in Hawaii. Dave actively supported professional and community organizations monetarily and in officer positions such as ASHRAE and the Armed Force Services YWCA in Hawaii. Dave was an inspirational leader to me and led by example. He always had a cool, level head and throughout thoughtful approach to problem solving and was a welcome member in any meeting. Shortly after Dave hired me in 1996, I was helping him make a presentation to the Navy utility engineers in Pearl Harbor. Right in the middle of the presentation, I spilled his coffee all over his presentation. Dave didn't miss a beat and just continued the presentation as I frantically cleaned the mess up. I figured my next cleaning job would be my desk. Dave never said a word, but just before our next meeting, he asked me if I had brought paper towels. Dave enjoyed being on the ocean, but not on a powerboat. He sailed his sailboat on the Alawai boat harbor for many years. However, even though Dave strove for energy conservation, he did enjoy getting on his gas-guzzling Harley Davidson for a ride around the island. Dave's engineering work in the discovery of new oil and natural gas energy sources and the refinement of those resources, his work in developing new programs for our electric utility for energy conservation and renewable energy, his work in researching renewable geothermal energy in Hawaii, all are his lifetime achievements, which will continue to benefit future generations and has made Hawaii a better place for us all to live. Dave passed in November of last year, but his wife, Beth, and their son, Xander, his family, friends, and Hawaii's engineers will always look proudly on Dave's lifetime achievements in engineering and energy. Congratulations, Dave, and your family that supported you. You will always be remembered in Hawaii. Roger, will you present Dave's Lifetime Achievement Award to Beth and Xander?
Yes, thank you, Sam, and congratulations to Beth and Xander. So we'll pass the bowl off to you, and then you can come and get it. It will be here. It will be here for you.
Why does it say that?
Again, congratulations, and thank you for being here today with us. So I'd like to congratulate all of our 4 honorees today. Great job, and keep up the good work. Now it's time for me to introduce our keynote speaker, Dr. William Chapman. He is the Dean of the School of Architecture at UH Manoa. Bill was educated at Columbia University and then at Oxford University for his PhD in anthropology. Bill has worked extensively throughout the Pacific and Asia and has served as a visiting lecturer at numerous universities in Southeast Asia. He's written on subjects ranging from the historic Volcano House Hotel on the Big Island to the Wright Brothers National Memorial at Kitty Hawk, North Carolina. His latest publication is Ancient Sites of Southeast Asia, A Traveler's Guide Through History, Ruins, and Landscapes. And that's a book that's available through the UH Press. Four-time Fulbright scholar, having done that in Italy, Cambodia, and twice in Thailand. He received the Frank Haynes Award for Lifetime Contributions to Historic Preservation from the Historic Hawaii Foundation in 2011. Since 2016, he's been a fellow of the Explorers Club of New York. Bill previously served as the chair of the Department of American Studies and as a director of graduate certificate program in historic preservation at UHM at Manoa. So Bill, welcome.
Roger, thank you very much for a very kind introduction. And I also want to thank Sam for reaching out to me. And congratulations to both Steve and Dave and his family for their awards. And I'm really honored to have a chance to speak to you all. It kind of struck me for a moment, like imagining tomorrow, how do I, and I'm giving a talk about old timey stuff. But, old timey stuff is definitely part of tomorrow. And that's what we try to promote in the field of preservation. So I was trained in archaeology and in historic preservation and always had a kind of technical interest. So I'm going to try to bend this a little bit to the interests of engineers. And we're going to be talking about ancient sites in Southeast Asia. And my dad was an engineer, so I guess I'm an EK or something, an engineer's kid. And it's really fun to see some old acquaintances there. I saw Mac McMorrow there, who came to a lot of my lectures, and his wife. And it's good to see Brendan out there. Brendan and I are colleagues. And Brendan, you already have the book, and I think we had the quiz scheduled for sometime in the next 2 weeks, right? So this will be a refresher for you. Okay, so I'm going to share the screen here. And it was really fun to hear about the mention of Alfred Yee, because we are, Bandit Kanistakhan, one of our faculty members, is putting together an exhibit on Alfred Yee. So I think that would be something in our revived Architecture School Gallery. So I hope the Shen Gallery. So I hope you can all come up and see that. It should be ready sometime, certainly by the fall of next year. All right, so I'm hoping everybody can see my screen. Am I right?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So this is the title. It's the title of an earlier book I did. And it's a kind of rapid trip through Southeast Asia. Probably, I don't know how many of you have seen Angkor Wat, but this is a picture taken about almost 30 years ago when the cleaning had just been finished. These buildings all have a lot in common, and they all have a lot of conservation issues and management issues and even engineering issues. So one of the things that's interesting about them is, the local people probably didn't really see these as ancient ruins. They really saw them as buildings that might have been out of use, or buildings that had declining purpose. But nonetheless, it was really the outsiders who kind of got all excited about this all through Southeast Asia. Some of the ruins we think of as ancient, but they weren't really that ancient. Mingan in Myanmar, and as we call the country now, in the back had collapsed, but it was only built around 1790, so it's not quite as ancient as you would think. A lot of these sites have living heritage, so there's kind of a dichotomy between the sites that are still seen really as sacred and the sites that, as one of my Thai colleagues calls, the dead sites versus the living sites. And so preserving ruins has developed over the last 100 years as a kind of specialty within the conservation field. And there are different approaches and techniques. The one on the left is a French technique, which is really kind of stabilizing almost in a moment of collapse. The one on the right is Borobudur, and it was typical of the the Dutch regime and then later Indonesians to do much more rebuilding, much more bringing it back to its original character. All right, so in the modern world, these ruins have become kind of tourist sites, and I think a number of you may have gone. And you get people from all over the world. This looks like a group of, I think, either Japanese or Koreans who are there at the site. So it's no longer just Westerners that like to go. And there are ruins in almost every Southeast Asian country, including Malaysia and Indonesia, of course. Now, Philippines has big churches and things like that, but they don't really have a history of ruins. Now, some people might take pride in thinking it's not really Southeast Asia. It really came from India, and that's true to some degree. A lot of the names and things like that, and the basic form of the building comes from India, which is really to mimic the shape of Mount Meru, which is the holy mountain and the residence of the gods in Indian traditions. So whether it's a relatively small monument like this at Mison in Vietnam, and you can see from an engineering point of view, I think a lot of you maybe can see this sort of efflorescence, of course, that's caused by some ill-conceived repairs done with concrete by the Poles back in the 1990s, or whether it's the Bayonne in Angkor, which has been the subject of a multi-year project by the Japanese government, and the restoration work is really of the top quality. And again, like I said, a lot of sites, if you go to Bali, you go to see the sites and they're still inhabited, and it gives you kind of a little insight in what maybe these ruins might have looked like in their own time. And tourism is actually both a boon, and it's also a threat to these sites. People tend to cluster at certain places and cause a certain amount of wear and tear. Most people want to see the real high points of these sites. So if you go to Angkor, for instance, which is where this was taken, looking from the Bakang over to Angkor Wat, if you're not there, you could see another site all on your own. So I'm going to go through these sort of quickly by country, but Borobudur really is the discovered abandoned site because, of course, the Buddhism had declined in Indonesia to the point it was no longer practiced because of the rise of Islam. Borobudur, but today is really a kind of a visitor site, and it's set up almost like a park. Here's an engineer for you. His name's Theodore van Erp, and he did the first restoration of Borobudur around 1900. In the 1970s, UNESCO did a major project at Borobudur, and this was at the time when UNESCO thought it could take on all the big projects in the world, like Abu Simbel and Egypt and things like that. And it is a sort of funny to read. It's sort of like we spent $2.5 million on it. It's sort of like shades of what's that movie where it was like, I want $1 million, Dr. Evil. And, an apartment would cost that much in nearby Jakarta, but nonetheless, that was a big expenditure at the time. So Cambodia is really the big home of ruin sites, and they really have embraced it so much that it's part of their national flag, and that is where that group of tourists were taken. Picture for that was taken from the platform there. When I first went 30 years ago, this was still occupied by Cambodian troops who, or actually Vietnamese troops about to leave. And so this is really, again, sort of gives you an insight into what these sites in Cambodia were like. They're, again, a Mount Meru-like platform, and they usually have 5 towers at the top, forming what's called the quincunx. So Angkor Wat actually has that as well. The Bayonne would look very different from Angkor Wat, but in fact, with these faces of probably Jayavarman the seventh, who was a prolific builder, and maybe Brahma's face and maybe Buddha's face, all sort of overlapping in a sense as a single being, it has a much more immediate kind of appeal. These sites gained international recognition beginning really in the 1860s. They were never really forgotten, as the narrative would say, the forgotten sites. But by the 60s through the 80s, they had become kind of celebrated, and the French particularly got excited about their sites. I saw about comment about Dave in the Vietnam War. The Vietnam War, a lot of the people basically were pushed out of these positions. They kept the project going until 1972, and then they basically abandoned it as the Khmer Rouge took over, and ended up actually, this takeover ended up the death of many of the people that had been working on these sites. In the 1980s, the Archaeological Survey of India was invited in to sort of help reopen these things, and they undertook this really big cleaning operation that a lot of people were critical about, and they got bad publicity in the Times and other places. By the 1990s, there were a whole bunch of different projects underway. The one by Sofia University, the Italian government sponsored the work on the causeway of Angkor Wat. The project on the left was the Royal Angkor Foundation, which was German money and Polish experts. So working on this site, and here they're actually just recording it. The Bapuan is a really interesting site. It predates Angkor Thom, where the Bayon is, and it dates to about the 11th century. And frankly, it never succeeded from an engineering point of view. It continued to collapse and fall periodically throughout its history. And only recently have the French built an enormous concrete substructure to carry the weight of all the stones. One of these sort of interesting projects was the Apsara project, where the German team again from Leipzig did sort of a minute analysis of each of these sort of holy dancers known as apsaras, or and technically in Sanskrit it's apsarasas if it's plural. Anyway, you can see some of the problems facing them, and you can see that you have what they call basal decay on the one on the right, and they've tried to put together a separate kind of description, a separate kind of conservation protocol for each of these 1,500 figures. So Vietnam has My Son, which was badly damaged in the Vietnam War. And I always love this slide because it kind of seems to suggest what colonialism was about. But then the more I looked at it, I always noticed that the Vietnamese servant there was the only one in the shade. So she's not actually shading him, as you kind of have a thought to think, you know, what is it? Mad dogs and Englishmen, mad dogs and Frenchmen too, go out in the midday sun. So My Son had a lot of different problems, and that started with the Poles working on it in the 1990s, but then more recently an Italian team has been trying to undo some of their work and do a lot of testing, and is at a very sort of high conservation quality. A lot of the sculpture in the Vietnam monuments has actually been assembled in museums, so you don't actually see as much on the site. Laos has this one really wonderful site in addition to many living sites, but this is Wat Phu and Champasak in the southern part of Laos. And here you can see it's being recorded very carefully and stabilized. And it's a really impressive monument. And we used it once for a Getty training project that I was involved with when the Getty Conservation Institute helped out. That's where my picture is taken when I'm thinking, and my background is from there. It's not really my house at the base of Waikiki. This is actually, I'll just let you in on a secret, a fake background. That's the Getty Conservation Institute's Getty Villa. So Thailand was kind of, the idea of restoration there was really pushed by the Thai government itself back in the colonial period, because as you know, Thailand was never colonized. So Sukhothai in the north is the kind of original spot in terms of Thai historiography of Thailand, though that can be disputed and stuff. But you can see the buildings are somewhat different because they tend to be brick buildings, and the same at Ayutthaya. So they're made out of brick and they were covered with plaster. And what do you do? And that's another stone in the middle of this one. This is called laterite. It's a kind of iron oxide-like clay that's actually harvested and used for building. So this becomes a big problem for the conservation of these sites. Stone kind of takes a licking and keeps on ticking, and brick is very subject to erosion. And then if you were to make it all white and plaster again, it wouldn't have that feeling of antiquity. So the Wat Chai Watanaram and Ayutthaya is the subject of a project now by the World Monuments Fund, and a couple of my friends from Columbia who were teachers there are working on it now. Presentation's a big deal in Thailand, and they tend to basically do kind of attractive parks around them. And they do have living sites in Thailand too, like Wat Prata, Lampang, Luang. All right, so the last big country with a lot of sites is Myanmar, and this is Pagan. And the first time I went to Pagan, it was during a period of sort of lockdown for the country long ago. And I was literally, I'm one of about 5 people on the site. Now you get more tourists there. Back in the time the British ran it, they had a very hands-off approach. That's Lord Curzon, who was the viceroy for India for a while, and his wife, who was the daughter of a Chicago department store owner, and probably not in Burma. This is probably in Bengal. But on the right, you can see the way they kind of left these monuments untouched. Well, as Burma approached independence in the 1960s, they kind of wanted to rebuild these and bring a sense of completion to them. So their problem is really a kind of over-restoration and a reintroduction of elements. And sometimes they rebuild them entirely from the bottom up, as if, and a lot of these have probably all the charm of a public restroom in a sense of the way they're kind of assembled and put together and follow a standard pattern. And they built a new viewing tower really to be able to collect tourist revenue from that. So the big issues are conservation. How do you do it? And every project has a somewhat different approach based on the kind of the traditions of that organization, but also based on the needs of the building. This is a French project. This is the Terrace of the Leper King right there in the middle of the Angkor Thom. And you can see they've introduced a lot of new laterite as a sort of a backing for these monuments. Management's an issue. World Monuments Fund's been working on a project for the Bakang to provide better control. Commercialization's an issue. This is a pageant at the base of Borobudur. Local people tend to like them. I don't get as upset as some of my more conservative friends. Encroaching development, all of these have things going on around them, not little quaint wood villages anymore. And local population, the park at Angkor has something like an estimated 80,000 people living spread within a kind of 200 square mile park. So this is an issue. When they live in quaint little wood houses and have ox carts, it's all part of the picture. But as they get pickup trucks and concrete houses, it starts to change things. And now there's kind of a deference to the projects, the places that have meaning. And I had a friend who worked on this project, working with local people, trying to make sure that it adhered to protocols. This is a statue at Angkor Wat that known locally as Tarich. And it's really a symbol almost for Cambodia. And he put back one of the arms that had been missing. There's been surprisingly little archaeology there. So that's another thing that's just beginning. And you can see even in this aerial photograph from NASA, you can see the roads that were part of Angkor Wat. And training is a big issue still there as well. They do have a kind of universalism and a universal appeal. So even though we could say there were sacred ones and there's ones living and dead sites, I think that everybody brings something of their kind of romantic spirit to these sites. So this is a head of Buddha at Ayutthaya that's often photographed. So this is was the cover of my book, and it kind of shows a lot of the problems that are underway. So Roger, I hope I got in under the time we had allotted. So that's my talk, and I'm again, it's been a pleasure to be here and to be part of this. So I'm going to stop sharing and pass it back to you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dean Chapman. That was very enjoyable. I've only been to Borobudur myself, but I'd like to visit a bunch of those other sites. But I do, before we finish, I just want to thank a bunch of people who helped organize this. Leighton Wong, Kirk Hashimoto, Warren Yamamoto, Malin Uehara, Jason Kage, Carly Kaneko, Jay Stone, Kristen Yoshida, Sam Gilly, and Michelle Adolfo, Ryan Char, and Bill Lee. So thank you to everyone, and thank all of you for being here today, and helping us celebrate Engineers Week. And this will conclude for 2021. Have a good weekend, and thank you very much.